The Muggle Death Eater and His Daughter by Great 78. Chapter 26. Assassins and Assignments. Linda's husband left through the same doors as Hermione and Draco had a few minutes earlier with the strange man. Linda turned, looking around a bit lost as she found herself the only Muggle in a room full of witches and wizards. A few stared openly at her with either unfettered curiosity or barely disguised disdain. Where was Narcissa? She didn't see the blonde woman's face in the sea of strangers. She and Narcissa had spoken very briefly about her niece Nymphadora. Narcissa had agreed to meet with the young woman next week when she and Draco met Linda and Hermione in London. Linda hoped that then she could get some answers from Narcissa about why she'd met Richard at that McDonald's months ago. Just then, another blonde head caught her eye. Lucius was bowing to a woman with whom he'd just danced, only about 5 couples away from her and Richard. Perhaps he could shed some light on things, considering that she had seen him going into her house and apparently leaving with her husband one evening. She made her way quickly to his side. "Hello, Lucius. I haven't had a chance to speak with you much this evening."
"Ah, Lady Linda. So lovely to see you. Would you care to dance?"
Instantly, it seemed, 2 more couples moved a bit closer to them, as though to eavesdrop.
No, I don't really feel up to another dance. Perhaps just a quick walk around outside for some fresh air?"
She indicated the open French doors that led to the balcony nearby.
"Of course."
Lucius bowed to her.
God, all that ridiculous bowing and scraping, it was too much.
She harumphed a bit too loudly, and made her way to the balcony doors.
"Richard, anything I can help you with?"
a low voice behind him asked. Damn it! How could he have let someone get the drop on him? He was used to traditional Muggle clandestine operations, not the silencios and disillusionments of wizards. He turned.
Geez, Narcissa. Sorry to be sneaking around out here. Hermione and Draco left with Voldemort a couple of minutes ago. I'm a little concerned."
"I am as well. I watched them go. I asked Draco's house elf to follow them. Pym?"
A tiny pop sound, accompanied by the arrival of an elf who looked far happier than the pitiful creature Richard had encountered in the house of Sirius Black.
"Yes, mistress. They are in Master Lucius's study. The Dark Lord has warded the door against intrusions."
"So you could not get in?"
"No, I was able to get in, mistress. His wards only applied to humans. But the Dark Lord used a muffling charm. I could not understand anything they said,"
the elf stated sorrowfully.
Narcissa nodded grimly. "Thank you, Pym."
The elf popped away. Narcissa took a deep breath.
"I guess we'll have to wait and see what the children say."
Richard nodded his agreement reluctantly. Lucius followed Linda from the ballroom at a short distance, making quick but meaningful eye contact with Nott as he passed. He had confided his concerns about Linda to Nott before, and Nott had laughed him off as being ridiculous. However, Lucius knew better than to underestimate someone because of their size. His own mother had not even reached his shoulder when he was fully grown, but he feared the woman until her dying day. He still averted his gaze guiltily when he passed her portrait, feeling her judgment-filled eyes following him. Once outside on the balcony, he found Linda in her cream-coloured Muggle gown, standing near the railing.
"Lady Linda, we're so pleased that you and your family can join us tonight."
Linda turned to him.
"Cut the bullshit, Lucius. I need you to tell me where you and Richard went that night."
Lucius was at a loss for words.
Sorry? I don't... What do you mean?
I saw you. It was a while back. He went into our house, then you showed up and went in the front door. But when I came inside, you were both gone. Lucius thought very hard. By Richard's own admission, this woman was just as dangerous and capable as her husband, and had raised a daughter that kept people in jars for punishment.
Please, it was just a small meeting. Some other wizards and I...
Lucius faltered. Had Richard told Linda everything? Likely so. If she was as good as Richard said she was, she would also be a good asset to the Dark Lord. He took a deep breath, prepared to tell her everything. "Just," Linda cut in, turning her flashing eyes upon Lucius. "When Richard was younger, he had a tendency to overdo it sometimes. Just make sure he doesn't overindulge. Years ago, when he did on occasion, he woke up feeling rougher than a barge's arse, and it made things miserable for everyone."
Oh,
What kind of indulgence did she mean? Lucius wondered in confusion. "I just know when Richard gets really blotto, it means everyone likely ends up legless, and things spin out of control quickly. Sometimes permanently." Linda finished, her eyes focused far away as if thinking of something very specific. Lucius drew in a sharp breath. When Richard gets blotto. Lucius had no idea what that meant, but he guessed from how upset she sounded that it meant angry. And everyone ends up legless. Salazar's ass! Did this man really cut off people's legs for sport? Lucius's bollocks contracted, and his stomach lurched.
"I understand,"
Lucius whispered. Linda patted him on the arm, giving him a knowing smile. "I knew you would, Lucius. I think we're going to go soon. I'm feeling a bit knackered." Lucius bowed and kissed the back of her hand as she smiled regally at him, then walked away. Bloody Baron on a broomstick. He was going to have nightmares of legless people tonight, he was certain. "I guess we'll have to wait and see what the children say," Narcissa sighed. "Whilst I have you, Richard, Linda approached me earlier this evening. She's in contact with a relative of mine, and I believe you have also been in contact with this relative." Narcissa quickly explained her relation to the witch he had once known as Wix.
"Why did Linda get in touch with her?"
Richard asked nervously. Was Linda spooked about something? He had tried so hard to shield her from all of this. Did she suspect something? "I think she just wanted reassurance that Hermione is safe in the wizarding world. The three of us are going to meet in London soon."
"Please, don't tell her about me joining up with the Death Eaters, or the Order. It could be very dangerous if she knew anything. But keep me updated. I'm trying very hard to keep Linda out of any of this."
Narcissa nodded in understanding but said nothing. Linda was her friend, first and foremost. She wouldn't reveal Richard's secret to Linda because it would be dangerous for all of them if the wrong person found out. But she wouldn't betray her friend's trust either. Linda glided back through the French doors into the ballroom and looked around in search of her husband, smiling to herself. It was true there had been permanent repercussions of Richard's drinking days in his youth. One only needed to look at the tattoo on his arse cheek to find them. She hurried back through the ballroom, keeping an eye out for Narcissa so that she could say her good-nights. She was meant to meet Richard and Hermione at the fireplace in just a few minutes. Exiting the ballroom, she heard muffled footsteps down to the right, and took a chance that she was correct. She crept slowly on cat-like feet so as not to disturb anyone. but could not help but overhear a few words drift softly back to her, in her own husband's sotto voice. "Keep Linda out of any of this." Linda hurried forward at these words, but her footsteps were no longer so silent. She rounded a small corner and found Richard standing with Narcissa. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Oh, Linda!" Richard said, clearly startled. He looked guiltily sideways at Narcissa. "I was just coming to find Hermione so that we could go." What was going on? Linda's eyes narrowed and moved to her friend, but found her face entirely guileless.
"Linda, my apologies. I was just coming to look for Draco and Hermione, and found Richard doing the same."
"We don't know where they are?" Linda grew concerned for a different reason now. She was all for theoretical grandbabies in the distant future, but had no desire to become a grandmother at her age. Besides, they had left with that unusual man. "No, we do. They're in Lucius's study, discussing something, likely something for school," Richard said easily. Linda looked at him sharply. She could always tell when he was lying. He didn't have a specific tell, but somehow she was always able to discern it, all the same. The trouble was, she didn't know if he was lying about the children's whereabouts, or the reason that he was alone with Narcissa. Her inner debate was interrupted by a small pup. A little creature, much like the one that had greeted them in their fireplace the first time she had met Narcissa, had arrived. The creature began to speak, then noticed Linda's presence. He who was visiting with the children has disapparated, mistress."
"Lovely," sighed Narcissa, in relief. "Pym, would you be so kind as to let the children know that the Grangers are preparing to leave?"
The elf popped away.
"Linda, I'm so looking forward to getting together next week," Narcissa said, reaching to take Linda's hands in her own. Linda's eyes met hers. She did not know Narcissa's tells, but the other woman appeared to be telling the truth. Narcissa really was looking forward to it. Linda offered a quick hug to her friend. "Thank you for such a lovely evening, and for having us here. The meal was wonderful," Linda said. She could not say the same for the company. Nearly everyone she spoke with had been at least polite, except for Narcissa's sister. But on the whole, the group had not been overly welcoming, and she was glad to be leaving. "Thank you all so much for coming," Narcissa said graciously. "I'll see you next week. Shall I owl you?"
"Certainly, although I think it would be much easier in the future if you were to have a mobile device. You know how to use one, of course," Linda replied, with a calculated raise of one eyebrow. Narcissa hesitated for only a moment.
"Yes, I've used one."
"Well, perhaps we can get you your own whilst we're out," Linda said, with a tight smile.
"I'd like that."
Voldemort closed the door to Lucius's study behind them and raised his hands, wantlessly warding the door against entry. When he was done, he turned to Hermione and Draco, who had settled uneasily on the edge of the leather sofa.
"I had hoped that the three of us could have a brief conversation about Hogwarts. You understand, of course, but I do not wish this information to be shared outside of this room."
"Of course," Hermione said with false bravado.
"Excellent."
Voldemort paced slowly, with laboured steps in front of the fireplace in Lucius's study.
"A moment, please."
The elder wizard sat in a tall green armchair, and withdrew a... What was that? Was that a straw? From his pocket. He pointed it at his shoes, then seemed to realize his mistake. He replaced the straw carefully in his pocket, exchanging it for a wand. He tried again, pointing the wand at his shoes, which immediately untied themselves and fell from his feet. "I find shoes restricting," Voldemort said, by way of explanation. Draco and Hermione merely nodded, unsure of what to say to that. "As I was saying, I wish this to stay between the three of us. I have a special assignment, a mission that I wish for the two of you to carry out this upcoming school year at Hogwarts. I have been assured that both of you are very accomplished scholars about to embark upon your first year as NEWT students. Is that correct?" The young witch and wizard nodded again. "Superb." The man walked barefoot to a nearby window and looked out as he spoke. "Your assignment is simple. The two of you must kill Albus Dumbledore." Hermione gasped and covered her mouth with her hand. Draco's eyes were wide with shock. He turned quickly to her, pulling her hand down before Voldemort could look back at them and register her disbelief. "I trust with your prodigious skills and talents this will not be a problem?" Voldemort asked. Draco cleared his throat. "Not a problem at all, my lord," he said, with as much certainty in his voice as he could muster. "Good! That is good! It is important, you know. A task such as this is not to be undertaken lightly, and its failures could have catastrophic consequences, not only for the two of you, but for your parents as well." Hermione's stomach churned. She was seriously regretting attempting to complete a 5-course meal. Voldemort spun on the spot and disapparated, leaving the two of them alone. She turned to Draco fully now. He looked as green around the gills as she felt. "Draco, what the fuck are we going to do?" she whispered. "I don't know. We'll figure something out," he said in a wavering voice. All pretense of courage dropped. "Figure something out?" she said in a panic. "What's to figure out? He wants us to kill our headmaster. He wants us to kill the leader of his opposition." Her breaths were coming in fast and painful now. "We need to talk to your father." Draco stood, pulling her up from the leather sofa and starting for the door. "No!" she shrieked quietly, yanking him back. "You heard him. He doesn't want anyone outside of this room to know." Draco gave her a hard stare. "Hermione, we can't go this alone. If your father is working with them, he needs to know." She kept her hands on his. "Just wait. My father is a dentist, Draco. Yes, he's smart. He knows about lots of things, but he's no secret agent. He's just gotten wrapped up in this by accident. We can't put this on him."
"What do you suggest, then?"
"Let's just think about it. Voldemort didn't give us a timeline. It's not like he expects us to walk into the welcoming feast and Avada Dumbledore then and there. There's a way out of this. We just need to think about it." Draco sighed, pulling her into his arms and holding her close. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps they didn't need to rush into this. They stood there wrapped in each other's arms, her hands scratching lightly at his back, his right hand carding through her curls, whilst his left massaged her neck. After 5 minutes or so, Pym arrived to tell them that the Grangers were preparing to depart.
"Thank you, Pym,"
Draco said. The elf simply stood there. Draco cleared his throat and tilted his head at the diminutive elf. Pym popped away with a chuckle. He lowered his mouth to her, his lips slotting against hers. They would see each other again this summer, he knew. He and his mother had plans to meet Hermione and Linda in Muggle London, and there would be back-to-school shopping in Diagon Alley. But at 16, every parting was a tiny mourning. Every kiss felt like the last one, particularly when you've been asked to bring off the impossible. Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Muggle Death Eater by Great78.